I talk about it sometimes, the kind of racism I've encountered, but what was really interesting to me, Ange, is that I had that in the industry too, to the point when I was on Top of the Pops and had created history for the Indian community around the world. The first Indian ever to be on Top of the Pops, which to us was the biggest pop show in the world.
Everything.
And instead of being congratulated and instead of being talked about as breaking boundaries in the media and in the mainstream and saying, you know, Jay Sean breaks all boundaries being the first. No, the headline was Top of the Poppadoms.
Jay Sean's Basement Banter.
Welcome to another episode of Basement Banter with your boy, Jay Sean, me, obviously. And then these two idiots, well, affectionately idiots, I call them.
Thanks.
I love them. They're not idiots. They're far from it. Very intelligent. Adam Wood, Todd. Talking of intelligent, our guest today is not only one of my dearest friends, which is why I'm so happy to have her on our podcast, but she's also sort of one of the most successful, brilliant women that I know. Juggles two very, very different kind of jobs, guys. Number one, she's an angel investor and a very successful one at that. An early investor in sort of ClassPass, The Muse, a lot of other stuff. Okay. But decided, let's jump over to Hollywood and see what's going on there. And turns out she's bloody good at it. She manages Priyanka Chopra, another good friend of mine. Guys, I want to introduce to you my very, very dear friend, Anjula Acharia. What's up, girl? How we doing?
Doing so good. It's so good to, oh my God, you know, Jay, I love you. So, I mean.
Ange, I've known you coming up to what, 20 years now? Maybe, right? Close to 20 years.
Yeah, can I tell the story? Can I tell the story?
Please do, please.
Okay, so for everyone who doesn't know this, well, no one knows this actually. So when I co-founded a company called Desi Hits, which was a pop culture platform, one of the first guests that we got on was Jay Sean, and it was at the point where he exploded, and it was a really big deal to have you on our what was our podcast at the time? We were doing podcasting.
Before
and
it
I
was
remember
a
I
thing.
told everyone in the team that we had to fake it to make it, and we couldn't have Jay Sean come into one of my co-founders' living rooms and be recording a podcast in the living room. So I was we have to hire a studio. We have to look like we're the real thing. So we have to impress this guy. And, we didn't want to look like one of those Desi outfits that was I'm doing it from our uncle's house, just come in and drink some tea. So anyway, it was a big thing, but I instructed the team that we had to be professional for you, Jay.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good place to start. So why don't we talk about what Desi Hits, what it was, what it ended up being, and let's talk all about that first, because that's really important.
Yeah, well, I think that, coming from England like you, and then moving to America, there was this kind of real hole in pop culture for what I would really call kind of this fusion scene. And I think that when we saw you really pop, and you came to America, and we started Desi Hits before you sort of came to Cash Money and everything. Mm-hmm. But I saw that culture shift of that happening. I definitely had a vision with my co-founders that was going to happen, and and I always, actually, come to think of it, I always knew it'd be you. That was the other thing. I knew you would be the catalyst to spark that fire, which is why getting that studio and being super professional with you was the reason why I really honed in on that, because I knew you were the one, if anyone was going to do it. It's much like Priyanka. I knew if anyone was going to come from Bollywood to Hollywood, it was her. And I knew if anyone was coming from the UK to America, it was you. So
thank you, sweetheart.
Well, it's true. It's true. But it became true. So I was right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw this amazing fusion culture that was happening in the UK, and it was you and Rishi, and it was you guys that really started it, and I wanted the world to see it. And I felt so proud of it. And then when, Jay-Z and Punjabi MC really popped, that was also a big catalyst moment, right? Because that sort of went mainstream too. So that was a moment where I knew that this culture and this subculture that I think British Asians had created had this opportunity to be mainstream and affect global pop culture. And Desi Hits was really about that. And, you know, it's so funny. I look back, you were one of the early adopters of Desi Hits, but I won't mention names, but there were a number of like, you know, Desi artists that just completely blanked us and wouldn't talk to us. And I remember when we got you, I was like, how do we get Jay Sean? But we didn't get like some of the more emerging artists that were just like kind of like, nah, I don't want to do that. You know, they only cared about BBC, Asian Network, and they didn't care about us, even though we had way more followers by the time that we came on, we had way more followers than they did. But, you know, it's sort of, and then what's so funny, I remember we were trying to get, I won't say the name of the artist, but I won't call people out. But we were trying to get this one artist who wasn't even as big as you at the time.
Right.
And because I just really loved his music, but he wouldn't come on. And then I was like, you know me, I'm just like, I'm annoying like this. I was like, okay, so now because all these Desi artists didn't want to come on the platform, I was like, I want to get 50 Cent.
That's like, right. Let's talk about that. That's a big jump.
Right. So it was so crazy. I don't even remember how I got to 50, but how did I get to 50? I ended up taking him to India and he did a concert there. And I was working with his manager at the time, Chris Lighty, God rest his soul. And I remember like telling Lighty that I was going to take 50 to India, and I made it happen. Like, and then I was just like, you know, it's really funny because we had our 50th show, our 50th podcast, and I was like, I'd really like 50 to be on it. And
Amazing.
He was like, okay. And I was like explaining how big the South Asian demographic was and how like Jay-Z had like popped in it, and all these artists like will.i.am had done stuff, and Timbaland was doing stuff, and you know, I was talking a lot about you, and anyway, so that was how I got 50 on it. But my whole thing was getting 50 was like all these Desi artists were ignoring us. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go mainstream.
You know, it's amazing though, because I remember, like you said in the beginning, I thought that Desi Hits was actually just a portal, like a website with portal news about stuff in Desi culture and stuff like that. But you obviously had a much bigger vision of, like you said, bridging the gap really between, you know, Desi culture, which for some of the listeners who don't know Desi is basically everything Indian and everything sort of to do with our culture, and mainstream culture. And I think things really took a turn for you, if I can say so, is when the whole Lady Gaga thing happened and you meeting Jimmy Iovine. So let's talk about the Jimmy Iovine moment in your life, and let's talk about where you were, what you knew before you met him, and then what you became as you guys started becoming very good friends.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what I knew before I met him was the labels were outdated. They didn't know what they were doing, and they needed a big shakeup.
Sorry. Just to interrupt you, for people that don't know, Jimmy Iovine, head of Interscope, co-founder of Interscope Records, and of course, you guys know him from Beats by Dre now as well. So, just for people who didn't know that, please carry on.
Yeah. So it was funny. I was raising my Series B, which is basically a second round of capital for Desi Hits, which was basically considered a Silicon Valley tech company at the time. And, you know, people knew it more from the consumer perspective of being Desi Hits as like, you know, kind of podcast and content creator. But we were really kind of a Silicon Valley tech company. And we'd raise money from the Valley. And then when I was raising my Series B, which is second round of funding, somebody who had given me a term sheet, which is an offer of funding, had said that they wanted me to meet Jimmy because Jimmy was like their mentor, and there was no one like Jimmy that knew pop culture. And I was trying to create this big shift in pop culture, which I saw bubbling. You know, I saw bubbling through your music, I saw bubbling through Timbaland's music, I saw bubbling through Jay-Z, I saw bubbling through will.i.am, and you know, I remember Missy Elliott, and there was that sort of like that convergence that was happening in music.
Wow.
And then, anyway, I never saw Jimmy again for a while, and I raised funding. We raised another $5 million for our Series B, actually from a hedge fund. Didn't end up going with that investor, and then randomly, you know, I'm a networker, so I was out for dinner with this investor who said it to me, and he said, "You never met Jimmy, did you?" And I was like, "No, he canceled on me." I was like, "Right, like whatever." And I was flying to LA the next day, and and he said, you've got to meet Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, and he cancelled on me, you know, whatever. And he goes,
Right.
I'm going to get you a meeting with Jimmy and you're going to go. And I was like, all right. And he goes, and I have no invested interest in this now. It's just because I think you should meet him.
Mm-hmm.
So I met Jimmy and I had a 15-minute meeting with Jimmy, which was booked for 15 minutes.
Wow.
And Drew, the guy that introduced us, said to me, don't worry, if he likes you, you'll be in there for 4 hours. Well, I was in there for 4 hours.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Okay.
I was in there for 4 hours and we were talking everything pop culture.
It is an incredible talent to be like that, because not everybody has that. But if you had 15 minutes with one of the most important people in the music business, before you went into that meeting, was there a bullet point list in your head of what you were going to say? What did you, because this is so important. Those are those once in a lifetime meetings that people get. How did you grab him?
Oh my God, I'm really going to tell you a secret because it's you.
Yes, that's what we want.
Oh God. Jay, you remember you and I, we used to talk about The Secret. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm, of course.
So a lot of it's a secret. A lot of it is like, you know, attracting and it's like attracting things to you and visualizing and is manifesting. And at that time I was really into The Secret. Like, and we used to talk about it, you and me, because I remember you and I talking about it. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
Of course, and I still go by that to this day. Like, I've tried to get Adam on it, and Adam's like, "Yeah, okay, mate."
Okay, well, Adam, I'm about to convert you. Well, you know, and I remember just thinking, like, I remember just the entire plane journey there, just thinking to myself, just visualizing me and Jimmy just really getting on. I can't believe I'm going to say this.
No, but this is excellent.
Like,
but, no, Ange, this is honestly this is what my listeners want to hear. This is the kind of stuff that changes people's lives. You know, like it's changed your life completely. And it's because of a mindset that you had, as well as a skill set that you had. And I think those are really important things. I learned from you. And I think, you know, by you talking about this stuff, if you're whatever you're comfortable with, it's beautiful to share that. So obviously share whatever you want, but I love to know that you visualized this before you went in there. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I just really sort of visualized that this was going to be a great partnership and that he was really going to invest in me. And by the way, I didn't go there for an investment with Jimmy. Mm-hmm. He wanted to invest, and that was really catapulted by him. But I, in my head, was like, this guy's really going to invest in me. And I meant in time and effort and, you know, and just like, I mean, he was a legend. So the fact that I was going to get this person's time,
right?
I just really visualized that we were going to have a partnership.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we ended up having.
100%. And I think what I'm trying to understand further is when I came into the mainstream atmosphere, like the culture, the landscape, mainstream landscape, there was a lot of ignorance. And I don't mean necessarily with a negative connotation. They just didn't know about our culture. So there were certain things that grab their attention, certain stats. For example, when you tell people that Indians are the second biggest demographic on planet Earth and there's God knows how many billion of us, people are like, oh my God, I need to buy into the Indian market. Certain things like that, they just don't know. So what did you sell him on? Like, what kind of things was he interested in where he's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I need to team up with you. You know this world, I don't. Was there anything he would gravitate towards that, you know, because this guy has everything, he's done everything. So what did he find fascinating?
Well, nobody had broken a South Asian artist. Nobody had really tapped that market. Nobody really understood how to work around Bollywood. Nobody had really like mastered it. So I think the fact that, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Jay. Like I mean, it was a long time ago, but I think I really talked to him about global pop culture, which, you know, is his passion, right? Like he's crazy about global pop culture and he's disrupted it and he's like created pop culture and that really sort of like excited him. And I think that, but it was really the population size, you know, at that point, like it was very much around, you know, there was 300 million in the middle class. There was like the largest population of people under the age of 30. So it was a very young culture. And it was, you know, and it was so sort of interesting. Like I remember playing him some of your music and just playing him music, which was like culturally very diverse and very fusion and what was happening in the UK scene. He was very into what was happening in the UK scene. Right. You know, I remember he introduced me to Jay-Z on our second meeting. And I was telling him, teasing Jimmy, I was like, you know, like, we don't have any like South Asian pop stars. I mean, it was literally you. And I was like, but we don't really have any South Asian pop stars. And, you know, and you guys are all stealing our beats, FYI. Like, I was just like, you know, like Jay-Z like came in and like, you know, stole this beat. And yeah, I mean, like, but, and then like Timbaland was coming to England and going to all of the.
Well, remember when I took him to the shop, the Indian music shop.
It was you that told me that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like,
yeah.
I told Jimmy that. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, Timbaland goes to these Indian stores with Jay Sean and steals all the beats. And like, Will I Am like stole like that beat from that song. I can't remember which one it was. Like, Don't Funk With My Heart is like the sample from I can't remember the name of the Indian track, but anyway, so I was like, you guys are stealing our music, but not putting us in front of it. Like, how's that allowed? And like, I just remember like losing my shit about it.
It's funny. I used to think the same thing. I actually had a lyric in one of the songs that I did called "Stomp" with Rishi Rich, where it was like that's when I was rapping a bit more. I can't remember exactly what it was, but along the lines of, when I use an Indian instrument, it's cliche and expected, but when Timbaland uses one, it's a smash and genius. And you know, and it's really interesting because I always felt like that was the bullshit that I faced, was that when I took something that actually was true to our culture, and me and Rishi, we knew how to use Indian music properly. Like, it was so funny. I'd go into studios, like once I got signed to Virgin and stuff, and they're putting me in with all these massive big time producers who had done stuff for, you know, all the big main pop stars, and they were literally playing me tabla loops, right? And over like a guitar, it would be like a ding 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 ding, and underneath, and I'm going, what is this bullshit? Is it just because I'm Indian you think you have to play me a tabla? But it was that ignorant, that they didn't think I could do anything that was outside of my world, and that's all I could write a song to. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm sure you came across obstacles and challenges when you were breaking Priyanka, for example, right? Like, yes, if you Google Priyanka and you're trying to convince Hollywood of what an immense star she is, they're going to Google her name and they're going to see all these Indian songs. They're going to see her dancing around and maybe not understand how she might be able to fit into mainstream culture. So what obstacles, if any, did you face, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's so funny. I was just talking on this other podcast about entrepreneurship and kind of what you learn through building companies and entrepreneurship. And, you know, I think that one of the things, like, you know, we tried with the music a bunch of times, like, you know, Priyanka would go into the studio with different people and the same thing, they would go, oh, we got the sitar sample and we got this. But it wasn't that we didn't want to embrace that. We really did. She really wanted to embrace that. But I don't think we ever got the formula right. And I think it has a lot to do with, you know, kind of like people's perceptions, right? Well, the moment she walks in, they've done their research. They've seen her in India, they've seen her in Bollywood, dancing to like, and lip syncing to a lot of this music. As an entrepreneur, when something isn't working, you pivot. And, you know, the brilliant person that really taught me that was Payal Kadakia, who's the founder of ClassPass, who whilst I was running Desi Hits, had incubated ClassPass into my office and was working with her every day. And, you know, I remember, you know, Jimmy always said to me, oh, you have to really anticipate pop culture. You have to really, you have to see where it's shifting, and you've got to jump in when you see the shifts. And, you know, like I said, the music from the perspective of like getting that fusion, just kind of, we didn't get the formula. It didn't click. But what I saw happening was all these diverse female leads on all these TV shows, right? So whether it was Kerry Washington or it's Viola Davis or whatever. And I remember saying to Jimmy, like, we got to get her on TV. She's an actress. She's the most amazing actress our country has ever had. And we're sitting here doing this music, but what we should be doing is getting on TV. And she should lead the show.
Amazing.
And it's just like that pivot. And I really honestly think if I'd not been through pivoting with ClassPass, I don't know that I would have thought of that pivot so fast.
Wow. So for people that don't really know, like, obviously I knew, I had met Priyanka from years back, right? When she was, Yeah, which is crazy because she came to one of my shows when I was in India, maybe 12 years ago or something. Anyway, so we kept in touch since then. And then it was so lovely when I found out that you were working with Priyanka, because I was like, okay, two of my good friends going to be working together. And then, of course, you put us together in a studio together. I was writing songs with Priyanka as well. Remember that? I must have done 3 or 4 songs we were writing together on her musical project. And I remember thinking how interesting it was to find the right lane for Priyanka in music as well. Because as a songwriter, I was trying to find the right kind of lane for her to go down as well. But turns out, oddly enough, that had it not been for her, you were initially trying to break her as an artist in the music field. Had it not been for that path, you probably wouldn't have gone into the TV path.
I wouldn't have signed her, period. I mean, the reason we signed her is because Jimmy had given me a label that ran through Interscope, Desi Hits Interscope. And so I know I had a label. And the label signed Priyanka, and we signed some British talent too. But she was kind of my personal project with Jimmy. And we were in the music game. We weren't in the TV film. And then Jimmy convinced me to manage her. And that's when we kind of made this shift to, I stopped seeing her as an artist, as a music artist alone. I saw her as the multi-hyphenate that she is. And I was like, I can't look at it now just from a music perspective, because I'm not just a label head. I'm her manager. And looking at that, and and then I mean, she had 40 movies under her belt already.
Indian movies, you mean, right?
Yeah. So I wasn't Einstein to think that, but was.
When with Priyanka, when it came to making the move to TV, now this is again something that fascinates me about you, because tech was your thing. Clearly, it seems tech was your thing right in the beginning, because, like you said, you understood how to raise capital for Desi Hits. So you already had, that was your thing, right? Tech first.
Yeah.
And then you married tech and media together with Desi Hits. But you didn't know anything about the TV and movie industry in America. You had to learn that shit from scratch.
Zero.
So talk me through that. When you're like, I have an idea. Priyanka needs to be on TV in America. Right, fuck, who do I go to first?
Well, this is the beauty of rolling with someone like Jimmy Iovine. So, we talked about it. And then next thing, me and Priyanka are at a dinner party at Ron Meyer's house with Jimmy and Brian Grazer and Kelly Lee. And Kelly Lee was the person that had casted Sofia Vergara, Kerry Washington, Viola Davis, Sandra Oh. I mean, she was the woman behind it all, and we're sitting at dinner with her. And
women of color. Actually as well, which is in a lead role, which is really important.
And so Pri and I were chatting with her, and she was blown away by Pri. I mean, that's an easy thing. And then next thing, I was at dinner with her, and I just said, hey, you've broken all these amazing women, like, Sandra Oh and Sofia Vergara and every race out there. But, South Asians are 1/5 the world's population, and you haven't broken South Asian yet. And then, I mean, it took me to get a deal. We got a deal at Fox, and they basically wanted to do a deal with Pri. And then I told Kelly, and next thing, Kelly's on a plane to see Priyanka in India. Priyanka was shooting a movie in India, and she was like, I really want to do a deal with you. And I said, well, you need to go and convince Priyanka. You need to go to India and convince her, because she's not coming here anytime soon. So she flew to India, and she convinced Pri that we should do it wasn't a first look deal, it was a talent deal. So we should do a talent deal with her. And then that's how that happened.
So what's the difference for people who are listening? What's the difference between talent deal and a first look deal?
Oh, well, a first look deal, which we actually just did with Amazon for Pri, is where they get the first look at anything that we produce. So a talent deal is that they're basically betting on the talent, and they will. So, for example, with ABC, when we did the talent deal, they basically gave us I can't remember how many now. They gave us 30 scripts, and Pri and I went through 30 scripts, and we picked out Quantico, and they picked out Quantico, and we all picked Quantico as the vehicle that we were going to go with. And we were so lucky, because even if you pick a script but then it doesn't get made into a pilot, you got to hope it gets made into a pilot, and then once it gets made into a pilot, you got to hope that it gets picked up. And then once it gets picked up, you've got to hope that it goes to season 2.
Yeah,
it's like a thing.
exactly.
It's like you're on a constant wheel, right? I think we sort of did good in terms of the right script, and obviously Pri was amazing in it and nailed it, and the rest is history, as they say.
I remember seeing Priyanka. Sorry, Adam, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I was actually going to talk about history, as it were, pivoting back to that, because the one thing we actually sort of like took a huge leap over is that both of you are Londoners, or people from England, and
Londoners,
yes,
Londoners
have made a significant cultural impact on on the world, and also as the outliers of your community. And it's an interesting shift of like where the London musical scene was now, how it seems to have kind of faded away a bit. And really, I wanted to do, if we still have time, to talk about like, where that possibly still can return. Because it seems that when I first met you, Ange, I think it was Kensington Olympia. It was a massive, great big show, a showcase, thousands of people. Jay was the headliner that year. And there really was a musical scene in England that time of say Desi Hits, the BBC Asian network had just started. And I remember from listening to interviews with you before that you said that one of the greatest motivators for you was that you'd spent, your childhood or teenage years looking at musicals and film and TV, and there was never anyone that represented you. So what was the inspiration from day one for you to get into that scene, purely as to lead that charge, or how did that come about?
Wow, that really takes me back, and thank you for asking that, because it's pretty emotional for me. So when I was at school, and I was, old enough to play kiss chase in the playground with boys that were running the other way, running after all the little blonde, cute girls, and they were basically literally running the other way. I was chasing them.
Wow.
They were calling us packies, and they were just like, they kind of hated us. Like, and I was the only brown girl in my school. I mean, apart from my sister, who was of a different year than me. But like, when she left my primary school, I was the only one. And what I always remember is, do you remember the show? You guys will remember this. Remember that show, Grange Hill?
Of course. Oh, yeah. Right. Of course. Amazing.
It was a show that every kid at school watched. Everyone ran home to watch Grange Hill. Yeah. And I remember on Grange Hill, there was never any Indians in anything. There was never any South Asians in any show or anything, apart from like Mind Your Language.
And then EastEnders had one family in the East End. That's realistic.
That came much later.
Right, so it did, go on.
Yeah, so in Grange Hill, there was finally they had this Indian family or Pakistani family that were running the local store, of course, because it was like, let's lean into every stereotype we can possibly find. And there was this storyline of this young Indian girl who her dad sees her with this boy and then drags her to the doctors to have a virginity test because he doesn't believe she's a virgin anymore. And I remember the next day at school, I literally was beaten up. Like, I was literally, all the kids were picking on me, pushing me, poking me. One guy put a sandwich on my head and told me I was a dirty packy.
Oh my God.
Just made me feel like complete shit. Excuse my language.
No, it's fine. That's insane.
And I remember just walking home, crying my eyes out, like, because I've like literally been just beaten up and crying my eyes out and thinking to myself at such a young age that TV was responsible for the bullying that I got.
Wow.
And how responsible it was for the fact that I was going through this. And had the TV depicted me, portrayed us in a completely different way. Like, we were cool, like Jay, like you were one of the first Indians that were cool, right? So like, had there been more Jay Sean's around, maybe people thought I was cool, and maybe people would have treated me like that. You just came too late.
That's
too young.
insane. I never knew that story. That's insane. To carry on. So then you were just like, this is not right.
It really hit me from that such a young age that pop culture, in my mind at that point, was television, was so responsible for the way I was going to be treated in the world. And it really hurt. And I just had this desire for so long to change that.
That's You know what? You're so right. And Adam, thank you, man, for asking that, because it's, you know, obviously it's obviously must be weird for you as well, Adam, to hear that, because you're looking at it as a white guy in England thinking, shit, like this is something like, you know, and, you know, me and how many years I've known you and been your best mate. And, you know, and I talk about it sometimes, the kind of racism I've encountered. But what was really interesting to me, Ange, is that I encountered, you're so right, that happened to you in school. And yes, it still happens to this day. But I had that in the industry too. The fact that the sheer ignorance and really the audacity of the people in the media industry to think that they could get away with a cheap gag about Indians and like just really rubbish, low, like hanging fruit jokes about Indian culture, to the point when I was on top of the pops and had created history for the Indian community around the world. The first Indian ever to be on top of the pops, which to us was the biggest pop show in the world. It was everything. If you were on that show, you had made it as a pop star. And instead of being congratulated and instead of being talked about as breaking boundaries in the media and in the mainstream and saying, you know, Jay Sean breaks all boundaries, being the first. No, the headline was top of the poppadoms. Jay Sean performs on top of the... And I thought to myself...
That's so insulting. So insulting.
What a long way we had to go at that point. I was thinking to myself, like, here I am doing something that no one's ever done. God forbid, if this, you know, nowadays, that shit would become like...
Oh, that'd be done.
Yeah, me and Adam, we were talking about that, right, Adam? How many... insanely culturally insensitive jokes there were.
Well, yeah, we were looking back over, you know, some stuff in our recent history, you know, like
Only Fools and Horses.
You go to the Packy shop and goodness gracious me, even though that was a step in the right direction, they still had to rely on tropes that were just, you know, kind of played out, and you're kind of pandering to this cultural idea of who Indians are in English culture. And of course, you know, England was fundamentally built off the backs of, you know, India. You know, it's an insane injustice.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's my thing on that. Like, this is why, Jay, you are so critical, because people say to me all the time, well, what's wrong with stereotypes? By the way, Indians say this to me. Like, what's wrong with stereotypes? Like, they're funny and it makes people laugh. And I'm like, I don't have a problem with stereotypes at all. You can do stereotypes all day long. Please carry on. But if that's the singular story, if that's the only story that comes out about our people, then that's a major problem. Like, I don't mind, like, the goodness gracious me and all of that, if we have representation everywhere else, but we don't. So then people just judge us by that one singular story, and that's the problem. So, you know, in Hollywood, what I saw is we're all terrorists and IT guys. You know, either IT guys or a terrorist. Like, you know, there's nothing else. And that was another thing I really wanted to change, you know. And it's so refreshing. You see more and more writers now, more Indian writers coming through that can actually write real parts for us, you know. And that's going to be like a real shift. But yeah, I often think, I remember thinking, Jay, like, when you first came out with, I think it was Ride It, and it sort of went really mass. I remember thinking, wow, if when I was a kid, Ride It had been out, how would my experience be different? You know, like, for kids that were like at school when Ride It came out, I bet you their experience was very different, because it was something that it was a huge hit song that people loved. And it was an Indian guy singing it. And by the way, he was cool. Like, he wasn't marred in stereotypes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you saying that, because I think, you know, I always felt the same way. I always thought, why is it that you say the word Indian, people are like, immediately the first things that come to mind are like nerdy, listen to their parents, arranged marriages, and it's all these stereotypes that people had of us. It was never funny, smart, like a funny, like creative in the arts industry or anything like that. It was always the same bullshit stereotypes, like you said. And I always felt like if I have my chance, I want to break down those stereotypes. I want to show we can be cool, we can be funny, we can be good looking, we could be all those things, we could be talented, and we can be smart. And yes, we might have an arranged marriage and it might don't always have to marry. We might not, right? And obviously we know we've just been through a lot of racial tension, you know, in the last couple of months. And now that Hollywood is starting to open up again, In your experience, how do you feel it's going to change the system, if at all? And in terms of people of color having, different leads, different roles, writers, directors, people involved, do you think this shakeup was necessary? And if so, and if it is going to bring about change, do you think it's going to stay?
Oh gosh. I think this shakeup was so necessary. I think it was long overdue and very necessary. And honestly, Jay, I don't know. I hope so.
Right.
I really, really hope so. I really hope that this creates a huge cultural shift and a change for the rest, for the end of our days and beyond. And I want to be optimistic about it. And I want to say that, all the people, it's been such a huge movement and all the people that have come out to support it, I really hope their voices are heard. I think it has a lot to do with the election and which way America goes. I think that'll be really crucial to it. But yeah, I really hope so. I really hope so. What do you think?
I think it's really necessary. And I think that, it's the year 2020 and, we are a melting pot. We have assimilated I would say if we were given the chance to show how well we have assimilated into society as, India, as what they call immigrants, right? In India and in England, if you actually just go on the streets and have a look at the spread of people as opposed to what is depicted on the television. I always just say, if an alien came down and the only way that they could look at the Earth and what it's really like is through the TV, they would have a very warped vision of what Earth is really like.
Yeah.
Unless they went out on the street,
It's really funny you say that. Like, I remember when I was talking to Kelly Lee, who casted Priyanka in Quantico and all these other diverse leads. She's Korean American. And I said to her, like, what made you sort of get behind this quest, this movement of diversity and casting? And she goes, I was always really confused when I walked into the industry that the TV never looked anything like the life that I lived.
Exactly.
She was there. She grew up in New York. She grew up around America, and she was like, I could never understand it. Like, my neighbor was, Chinese, or my neighbor was Nigerian, or my neighbor was Indian, but never saw that on TV.
Right.
Like, it's
Absolutely.
always, it used to make me laugh, like ER and a lot of these musical shows. If you want to be stereotypical, please put more Indians in there.
Yeah,
Indians
exactly.
and hospitals.
It's so true. It's so true.
When it suits you, you like ignore all the stereotypes,
right?
But,
and the achievements, yeah.
And so with Priyanka, when you were doing casting roles for her, and when just sort of like the scripts are coming through for her, was it a lot of the same shit, same roles? Yeah.
I remember once she got an offer for a really big movie, and she didn't want to do it, and we discussed it, and they said, well, can you come back and play out the accent? And I was like, what? Sound like Arthur from The Simpsons? Like, it was just so ridiculous. And we both looked at each other and we were just like, no. But like, we are not going to play into the stereotypes. I think that, I think for Pri, it was super challenging. Like, people really, when she walked in a room, people expected her to be what they saw in Bollywood movies, or their stereotype of what they thought an Indian actress should be, right? So I think that when she walks into a room, she dispels that myth really quickly. But I still think that when you're thinking about casting, you're like thinking, oh, hang on 1 second, like I need to cast you in a certain way that meets the expectations of what I think the audience want from you.
Right, right.
So that's you
There's a boy from New York, and he goes on a business trip to India and meets this beautiful girl from the village, and she's carrying a pot on her head, and she's walking back, and he's like, hey, let me... seriously, it's and the thing I love about Pri is that she, like you said, she will break all of those the minute you meet her. And
that's the most amazing thing about her, right? For those of you who don't know her, like, she is just the coolest chick ever. Like, she really is just the coolest chick ever. And, she'll walk into a room and she'll just break everything that you thought. Like, she'll, and that's what I love about her, is that she's just been such a boundary breaking person, and just has like really lived up to what I needed her to be. Forget the world, or forget India, or forget anything. It was just like what Ange needed her to be, you know, from the perspective of as a consumer, not as a talent manager, but just like, you know, I remember telling Jimmy, like, I wanted to change pop culture for people that look like me. And I wanted to be able to look up to someone and aspire to them. And I never had anyone growing up, and I never had anyone in my adult life until now. So
look at that.
You know, as a woman.
Yeah, well, regarding breaking boundaries, it sounds like all three of you have, you know, done just that. And I think a lot of people owe you a great debt, the three of you collectively.
Oh, that's very nice of you, Adam. Thank you.
I did tell you I was going to ask you a question. So
oh dear.
Yeah, go on, of course.
But like, so, you know, for you being that, because people ask me this, so I'm going to ask this, and then you can tell everybody that asked me this. Like, coming from England and being one of the first people to break through, were you ever challenged with the responsibility of that? Did the responsibility, and people have asked me this, did the responsibility of that ever impact your creativity in a negative way? Did it ever push you into avenues that maybe you wouldn't have gone into if you didn't have that responsibility?
I think from the very beginning, when I knew that I was breaking all these barriers, when I knew I was the first one coming up against all of this shit, and I had the hammer and I had to knock down all these walls myself, there was no book I could read written by somebody else who'd done it before me. I was coming across it myself. I realized with that, when I was coming across that I was carrying a lot on my shoulders, more than just my career. I was doing this for my people, for my community, to set the path for people to come after me. And I think I took that very responsibly, very seriously, and I still do. You know, it's one of those situations where, you know, when they say there's that crabs in a barrel situation, right? And one gets out, and then you're all trying to claw on top of each other because you want to be the one. I never looked at it like that. I never wanted to be the one that gets out and never try to do anything for the people but after me. And I always felt like if I get through, I want to represent us in such a light that people go, holy shit, I might be the first and only Indian person Claire from Utah has ever heard of and seen on TV, okay? And if she goes, oh my God, he's Indian, I want to make sure that everything that comes out of my mouth, from the way that I speak and the way that I act and the way that I carry myself, reflects well on my community and my people. Because I'm her only window into our culture.
Right.
And I always have that in the back of my head, that if people look at me, I want them to go, Indian people, and I want them to go, fuck, thank God he's at the front of the race. Thank God. Because if it was any other person and they didn't put us in a good light, we'd be screwed, because this guy is our only window. Yeah. And, you know, luckily after me, there's been a lot of people come through, even though some people would claim they were the first brown boy to get it popping. I think everybody knows who it is. And again, it's one of those situations where when people come up to me to this day, Ange, I have messages from so many people going, like what you said. I had this Indian guy write to me, and now he's super successful. I looked at, he's like a massive entrepreneur. And he said, when I was in school, I was picked on as the little Indian nerd. And when you came out with your songs, I got to play your songs proudly and say he's one of us. And that, let me tell you, meant so much to me. To this day, it still means so much to me that these kids can go, you broke the way for us. So yeah, absolutely do I take it seriously, and I'm proud of it.
It's funny though, I used to say that like some people, when they were critical of you, they'd be like, well, he needs to be doing more Indian stuff because he's Indian, and he needs to be doing more this, and he needs to represent us in this way, and he needs to do that. And I used to say, you know, it's so challenging being one of the first people that come through, because you have all those expectations on you. And like, because I knew you and we were friends, and I knew your talent and I knew your creativity, and you know me, I wasn't really into the Indian stuff. I was into your R&B stuff. Like I just give me write it all day long. You know what I mean? Like that sounded bad. By the way.
Yeah. It's all good. That's fine. We know what you meant. Yeah.
We know we go.
But yeah, I was like, what about I just thought it was just such a. I felt like it was such a responsibility that weighed you down, in that why couldn't you just make music that you wanted to make?
Right. So check this,
like,
Ange.
why
I'm so glad you asked me this. And here's the exact answer. So check this out. I came through, as you know, the reason why the Indian people around the world can claim me is because I came to them first. The Indian people around the world, and I say Indian, let's say South Asians around the world, they heard me first on a song with Rishi Rich and Juggy D. That's the first time they heard Jay Sean was on a song which with a hip hop and R&B production, but with Punjabi vocals on it also. That allowed them to claim me because it was through that scene that I came up. They didn't see me on straight on Top of the Pops. They didn't see me straight on, you know, one of those the pop shows that came on, you see it on Channel 4. They saw me on The Word or something. No, they saw me on BBC Asia Network. They saw me in the studios at Sunrise Radio. They saw me getting interviewed by somebody called Anjula Acharia on Desi Hits. That's where they saw me first. So they got to claim me. And yes, even though the music in the beginning had little flavors of Indian inspiration in it, I always said this: if that is all I end up becoming, a little gimmick that in every song he has to have a Bollywood sample or an Indian instrument, then guys, we cannot grow. Because any other Indian artist that comes after me who wants to sing like Adele or wants to do songs like Ed Sheeran on a guitar, they're not going to be able to come through because they're like, no, that's not what you guys do. What do you mean? No, you have to add a tabla. If you're going to do a song like that, make sure it has a tabla underneath. No. So I always made sure that the music spoke for me. And if the music broke boundaries, then it would open us up to the rest of the world. And I always made the joke that if I wanted to do a song like, let's say, you know, Adele's Someone Like You, and it's just perfectly fine with just the piano. It's perfect with just the piano. She doesn't have any reason for people to go, do you think you should add a door to that? Or maybe like a little tabla? Nobody's saying that. But they're saying it to me.
I said, I think because like I was like such a fan of the R&B, I think that it really bothered me that people, and I just, you know, I feel like this is the thing about being one of the first, right? Like you have, Priyanka has it too. Like you have all these expectations on you that other people don't have, you know? Right. So you have this added pressure and this added level of approval from your community that want a certain thing from you, whereas other artists can just go make the music they want to make or make the movies they want to make, or make, you know. And sometimes, I mean, I guess maybe as a manager I feel that pressure too, you know, to give people that. But I remember it used to just come up a lot with you, like people used to say that to me and I'd be like, can he just make the music he wants to make? Can he just like be who he wants to be? Like why does he have to be what you need him to be?
And also, you know what I think about us, and you know this about us growing up, what I really love about our generation of people who are sort of like the British-born Indians and American-born Indians or South Asians, let's say, we love our culture coming from our homeland too. We love the food, we love the Bollywood movies, we love the music, we love Punjab. I know that you love some Bhangra songs, you love some of the Hindi songs. So do I. But guess what? We also love R&B. We also love hip-hop, right? So I got to do both of them. So just like, for example, I'll do a song with Gucci Man, which is a hardcore R&B hip hop record, but then follow that up 3 months later with a song with Guru Randhawa. And then after that, go and do a song with, you know, whoever it could be. It could be an artist from a Turkish artist or an artist or a K-pop artist. Or I'll go and do a song with Davido, who's an Afrobeats artist. And I love to do that. I love to hop in and out of musical genres.
Okay, I have to go and have my COVID test.
Go. But listen, didn't I tell you?
Make sure I'm safe.
Didn't I tell you we could yap on for ages? I told you.
I know.
I've got so much more. Exactly. I've still got so much that I want to talk to you about. But you know what?
We can have a part
come
two.
Back. Come back, please.
So much I want to talk to you about.
All right, we'll do a part 2. But listen, you go get that thing shoved up your nose, and I mean the COVID test, and we will talk later. All right.
Off the record, there's not much other shoving happening, by the way. So. Gotta get what you can.
Up the nose, fine. All right, darling. Well, listen.
Thank you so much.
I love you guys.
I love you too, so man. Much. Of course. Bye. Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye, darling.
Bye.
Bye.